conversation as I personally did. Again, we would like to remind you that you can donate at uc-2020.com and that we are supporting charities providing COVID-19 relief efforts and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Those are Inner City Arts, Black Lives Matter, Artist Relief, the Loveland Foundation, Doctors Without Borders, MBK Alliance, World Central Kitchen, House of Ruth, and Black Visions Collective. I'd also like to remind you again that we have digital care packages from our speakers available on the website. If you click on the speakers' bios, Craig Maud's password is walking, and Evan Kleiman's password is good food. The code for the upcoming digital care package from Carmen Chan is exposure. Also, continue to check IG for the handle @unexpected connections to get some more content. The upcoming segment is a conversation between Carmen Chan and Lillian Martinez. Carmen Chan is based in Los Angeles by way of New York and Hong Kong. She's passionate about supporting women and diversity in art, culture, and design, specializing in portraiture and travel photography. Her work embodies her love of telling stories about people and their spaces, capturing moments that feel meditative, intimate, and elegant. This astuteness has given her the chance to photograph individuals like Mark Bradford, Alexander Wang, Diane von Furstenberg, Philip Lim, and more. She recently published a book, Exposure, to create a platform for 9 female artists, which she will be talking about shortly. Lillian Martinez's work explores alternate histories where women, particularly women of color, are not excluded from specific cultural narratives, typically associated with privilege. Through her paintings, sculptures, and works on paper, Lillian blends past with present and future, combining classical architectural elements with contemporary pop cultural references to create the settings for her portraits, landscapes, and still lifes. She is the founder of BFGF, an art brand that makes functional art objects like keychains, throws, and pillows available to a wide audience. She has exhibited her work nationally and most recently with Ochi Projects in Los Angeles. We're really excited to have Carmen and Lillian share with us about the artistic process, the importance of context, and how all of that relates to representation. Let's head over to that conversation.
Hi, I'm Carmen Chan. I'm a photographer and I work in commercial and editorial spaces in photography. I am passionate about supporting women and diversity in art, culture, and design. My work, a portion of it consists of commissioned studio visits with artists a lot of the time for serial magazines, the New York Times, the Washington Post. And one thing I noticed both in the commissions and in like my personal visits to museums and just in the art world in general, it's well known that female artists are dramatically underrepresented in museums and galleries. And so I had an idea as a result of all of those experiences to create a platform and a photo project that would create a platform for female artists, give us a glimpse into their processes. And my hope was to create, to bring attention to their work and to foster an appreciation for the work and the journey it took for them to get there. So with this book project, I was hoping that people would discover new work of female artists that they love and curate a body of work that speaks to them, in addition to what they normally see in museums. So at the end of every, so the book consists of photos of studio visits to each artist, each of their workplaces, and then a short interview to accompany the photos. And then at the end of every interview, I also ask the artists who their favorite female artists are. So I'm just hoping to continue to grow this resource for people interested in finding amazing art by women. So I spent a year on the project. It was the first book project that I had ever done. I worked with a business coach to help keep me on track and accountable for meeting deadlines that I set for myself. The main one, which was to publish by International Women's Day of 2020. So she helped me create weekly action items to make the project feel manageable, because creating a book felt like a huge endeavor for me since it was my first time doing it. So she helped me see, like, rather than it feeling overwhelming creating this book, Just, this week my goal is to do one shoot. Next week my goal is to send out the interviews, and then another week is to find a designer. So small steps at a time, and eventually, like, the book was printed and in my hand, and I was like kind of in awe, because I didn't even envision it to be the way that it turned out, and it turned out like more amazing than I could have imagined. So with that, and the success of that, I definitely want to create future volumes that feature artists of color. And some feedback I got after publishing the book was from someone who bought the book who I didn't know, and they were a fan of Lilian's, and they said that they bought the book and they had been looking for one. They had been looking for a book that featured contemporary artists, and especially artists of color. And I looked at the work that she was doing, and I just thought it was cool that I made this volume of work that featured people who looked like her, who looked like me, and whose art that we could relate to. And so I think for me, like, if I can move the needle ever so slightly for someone, whether it's for an artist or for someone who is an aspiring artist or someone who just appreciates art and sees themselves in the art, if I can affect someone in that way, then like my goal is achieved for the work that I do. So the book features 9 female artists, and one of them is Lilian, and super excited that she could join us for this segment. And hi, Lillian. So Lillian Martinez is an artist whose work explores alternate histories where women, particularly women of color, are not excluded from specific cultural narratives typically associated with privilege. She's the artist behind the art brand BFGF, that mainly features woven versions of her artwork, and she's also currently exhibiting a solo show at Ochi Projects called Bart Beethoven Wi-Fi. Ochi Projects is a gallery based in LA, and her show can currently be viewed in an online viewing room at Ochi Projects. She joins us from her home studio in Yucca Valley, California.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Carmen. Thanks for inviting me to participate.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I have a few questions that I want to ask you, and I wanted to dive deeper into the interview that we did for the book. So let's start. So you said that you practice art because it's personally fulfilling and improves the quality of your life. How has your art practice helped you get through the past few months?
I feel like it's been a really big privilege to be able to continue to make work and explore ideas. It feels good to paint, and I think that has helped me probably in ways that I don't even realize, just to be able to have that outlet still, because my studio is in a detached garage on the property where my home is. So it's like, steps away. I can come out to the studio whenever I feel like it. And I feel like my routine hasn't shifted that much because I work from home. But I feel like it's probably more of like an emotional or psychological shift, being safer at home. So I feel like I'm still sort of processing everything, trying to figure out what has shifted for me while still continuing to work and just doing things that feel good and feel like I'm continuing to grow my practice.
Do you feel like the response has been different to your work during this time at all?
Not that I can think of. I think it's more like people reaching out, like, do you want to be part of, for example, this conversation? I feel like it's creating more opportunities for people to connect, but I don't see people reacting to the work so much different than in the past, or not that I can tell, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you're working on pieces at your home studio, what point do you know that they're ringing true to you, and when do you consider something ready to share with the public?
I think initially I just have to feel like super excited about it. And if I'm excited about it, then that pushes me to make a sketch and sort of figure out all like the logistic steps that I need to take to make the piece possible. And then once I have all those things in place, like it's really hard to stop. Like I just have to make the work, because it's just like I'm super excited about it. And I feel like that's it. It's really just a feeling, you know, like if it feels right, if it feels good, it rings true to me. What I found is that, you know, I can make that connection with someone else without trying. It's just like this like emotional language that I can speak to someone without having to use words or language. It's just like a connection. And I feel like I share a lot of work in progress. I feel like there's a lot of beauty to me in like those unfinished details, seeing the work in the studio. And I love sharing those moments with people that follow my work. So I think once I'm past the sketch and sort of that process of figuring out how am I going to make this work, and I'm making it, then I know that it's something that I feel good about. And then I feel really comfortable sharing it with people at that point. In different stages, you know, there's different layers of sharing. So I think, yeah, it's really just a feeling, like to be able to follow your instinct, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I loved about visiting your studio, and I think the thing that I love sharing, or you know, visiting artist studios and seeing their work is the process. Like it's super fascinating to me, and I'm sure like it's awesome that you're open to sharing the layers and the time and maybe your thought process behind your pieces too. Like that insight, I feel like also helps people appreciate your work more, because I'm sure there's like things that, for example, the casting that you're doing, you know, like what it takes to get there. So I feel like it's definitely beneficial for you and for you know, people that are fans of your work to like actually feel like they're a part of the process, you know, and not just seeing the finished piece.
Yeah, it's really nice to make that connection, I think. Even when I look at other artists' work, I love seeing, you know, photos of their studio or their supplies, their materials. It's just like really exciting. And, you know, there's beauty in all that, you know, the palettes and just, I don't know, the materials, I feel like can be really beautiful apart from the finished work as well, you know, separate.
Totally. Yes, 100% agree. And then as far as like before you have an idea, before you sketch even, because like when you shared about your antique roadshow piece, like do you have a journal that you kind of keep ideas in? Like what, you know, or do they just kind of come to you and then you sketch? Like the first existence of an idea for a piece is your sketch.
Yeah, usually I don't use, I guess I don't write, I don't use language so much in my practice, even as far as like, you know, making lists. I usually just, it's all in my head. And then I, and, you know, figure it out from there. I have a lot of open tabs in my browser sometimes because I'm like, okay, this is what I need to make this piece, you know, like, so maybe it would benefit me to write stuff down, but that's just how I work right now.
No. Yeah. No, totally. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to the tabs thing. I think that's a universal experience. Cool. No, I mean, I don't feel like, I think whatever works for you, you know, I think it's cool that you just, even if you just have a bunch of sketches.
Also, I think for me, it's helpful to be like, if this is really important to me, then I'll remember that I want to make this. That's sort of like also a stepping stone in my process. Like if I can easily forget about it, then I don't usually pursue the idea. It's just like a thought. I hadn't thought about that till now.
Cool. So, yeah, that's a good kind of like, you sit on it, and then if you're like, oh, I still really want to do it, then like that becomes,
then you know I have to do it.
Yeah, then it comes to life. Awesome. Okay. What ideas have you explored recently that have led to the use of a new medium?
Recently I've been working with like leftover packing materials from packages that I've ordered online or stuff that I've done like curbside pickup for. Like sometimes they'll include packing materials in it if it's like a delicate thing. I think I was inspired by this sculpture I saw in Mexico City We took a trip earlier this year. That was our last trip before shelter in place. And I saw a sculpture made of styrofoam, and it was painted, and it was like really interesting. And I was like, wow, I can't believe this has lasted so long. And it's in a museum. That's really amazing. So just thinking about like taking this material that's not meant, I guess, I don't know. I just feel sort of weird to throw this material away, especially right now that, you know, people are consuming so much from home. And there's a lot of leftover materials, and the material is very sturdy but lightweight. So for me, it's just a way to explore that idea of like consuming and also like taking this material that's not conventionally used to make a piece in fine art because it's seen as disposable, or as like it doesn't maybe have the longevity, but like seeing it actually, an example of it survive and still be a really interesting piece, I think inspired me to sort of play around with those types of materials. And, you know, I just felt weird throwing all that stuff out. So I was like, I might as well try it. Or cutouts or sculptures made of styrofoam. And they're just kind of like really playful pieces for me, I guess, just like experimenting and trying to have fun.
Yeah, really cool. I thought the part where you said that like it, you know, it's typically disposable material and like the permanence or the impermanence of it, the permanence of it if you put it in a museum or something, you know, and like seeing a material that is disposable being seen as art or you transforming it into art. I think that's super interesting. Did you feel like your approach to the medium was different? I mean, looking at the results, I feel like this could have been, you know, clay or anything really. Do you feel like the medium changed your approach at all, or did you kind of just use it like you would a typical conventional art medium?
I feel like looking at it, the form and the colors are very like in line with my body of work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it allowed me to be a little bit more minimal, I guess, because it's just like a shape and a form as opposed to like composing an image. So I imagine if I use one of these objects in a painting, it would be surrounded by other objects and, you know, would make a complete image, whereas this was just sort of almost like a snippet or like, you know, a piece of, I don't know, I guess it seems more minimal to me in a way.
Yeah, it does. That's really interesting. Can you walk us through your creative process for a piece you made for a recent show, for the OT Project show?
Yes, it's called The Big T-Shirt. Both
Awesome.
pieces of The Big T-Shirt. And it started initially as a sketch, or not a sketch, but a drawing on paper. And that's the one where it's the figure is, well, a T-shirt takes up a majority of the frame. So I think I was thinking a lot about comfort and sort of this oversized, wearing oversized things can feel like they're protecting you, but they're also offering you a lot of freedom to like move around. And I feel like I think about clothing a lot in my personal life and in my practice, not so much like in a fashion perspective, but more of like, it's a way to think about presentation and representation of like a body and like, what are you comfortable in, you know? So I feel like that piece was all about comfort and protection. And then I feel like in the following piece, the final piece, it feels more to me like the figure becomes a canvas of like her own experiences. So they're both related, but it's sort of like an evolution of an idea that I had 2 years ago and that I've been continuing to explore. And also, I think for the show, I was thinking a lot about the inheritance of culture and information as a second generation American? And how do I organize all this information? Because it's not like linear and it's not like narrative, it's more like a remix of all my experiences and and how do I process those experiences through my perspective. So I feel like this is sort of a culmination of that thought. And then on slide 4, this one's called Blue Jogger. And it started with the sketch of a sneaker on a leg, a digital sketch. I just had like that image in mind and I worked from there. And I feel like this piece is kind of like a body and leisurely motion. So again, we go back to comfort, which is something that I think about a lot. And also I feel like the balance, or like the space that she's occupying, to me, it feels balanced. And I feel like I think a lot about the way that we occupy space in life and in my work. Like, how do we comfortably occupy space that wasn't necessarily like made for us or made with us in mind? And that's something that I think about a lot. So I feel like whenever I'm making an image, I want the subject to comfortably occupy the space and peacefully occupy the space in a way that feels good to me and that makes sense to me visually.
What role does the dog play in this painting?
I just love painting dogs. Like, so fun to draw, and you see them so much in like art history in that context. You know, you see really like silly looking dogs in all these grand like classical paintings, and I think maybe it's like a reference to that. I think that's how I started painting dogs, like just noticing all these like fun little dogs in these paintings that were very serious. So I think a lot of my work definitely references periods in art history that are then like reconstructed or remixed based off of contemporary culture or like how I experience those works.
Cool. And then for the big t-shirt piece, what can you explain what is on the t-shirt?
Yeah, there's this clip. Well, there's this whole cartoon where Bugs Bunny is playing Moonlight Sonata. And I feel like in a way that's like a huge remix of, you know, the classical and contemporary, but more in like an accessible, like a really accessible, I don't know. I mean, cartoons are so like so many people see them. So I feel like for me, I really liked that combination of classical and contemporary, and you know, it's humor, but it's like such a beautiful song. I love that song. Like, it always makes me super emotional. So it just had all the like small pieces aligned with like stuff that I'm really interested in, and it's just like such an interesting image to me, especially because I feel like these cartoons weren't made for me, you know, necessarily, but like the way that we experience them, I don't know. I guess that's all I can think of right now.
No. It's super. It makes sense, and it's super interesting. It's interesting to me that like the way that you explain the dog in your paintings, or seeing dogs, is like the big t-shirt piece. It's like there's multiple layers of meaning for you in that, and you looking to the past, and like both of these pieces are like layered in many ways and remixed in many ways with like contemporary things and things that reference tradition and the past, and then also representing things that, yeah, like you said, they weren't necessarily meant for that purpose or something, but then like the way that you interpret them, or the way that your viewers interpret them become very unique to them.
Yeah, I think it's really amazing when someone can connect with the image that I'm making, because it's such like a specific, the imagery is so specific. So I feel like that makes me feel super connected. That people are having maybe not the same experience, but we have some sort of connection in the way that we perceive things, or the way that we've experienced various things, you know, in our lives.
Yeah. It fascinates me too. Okay. What has guided your work's evolution over the past 5 to 6 years?
I think it's been really important for me to follow my instinct, and to work on things that I'm really excited about. I think it's been important for me to like invest in materials, or supplies or projects that I'm really excited about. And that can be scary, I think. But it's been really important, and I feel like that's something that I always recommend, is if there's a project that you know, if you're that pumped about it, you know, it's worth it to invest, even if you don't know what the outcome is going to be, or, you know, I don't know. I think that's been super important.
Mm-hmm. And what aspect of like investing in the materials and stuff is scary to you?
I feel like it's a monetary thing for me, at least initially. Before my practice was at a place where it's at now, like not knowing if I'm gonna make my money back, or if this is gonna work out. I feel like coming from a place where I really had to think about how do I spend the money that I have. I feel like that's scary, especially in a younger version of myself. Like even just buying paints, it can feel like a huge thing. Like, should I be doing this? You know, because it's just a personal project. It's just something that I'm interested in. It's not necessarily a career yet or a job. But I think it's important to invest in those things if it's something that you really want to do, and even if it sounds scary. I mean, I'm not saying like, I feel like I really encourage taking informed risks. That's been really important to me in my practice, is to take informed risks.
Mm-hmm. And then what is it? Is it the experience of multiple informed risks that you've taken despite the fear and investment that have now brought you to a place where you can do that with more confidence, or did something else occur where it feels less, scary?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of all these moments where I've seen, where I have experienced that, where I'm like, should I do this? I feel like now I'm at a point where I can just invest in a project that I'm really excited about, without that amount of pressure as I felt before. And it's really hard for me, I feel like, to pick out like defining moments in my career or in my practice. I feel like people sometimes will ask me like, what was the point where you knew this or that? And I feel like that's so hard to say. Like, it's all like just a combination of these very small moments. I feel like when I first started, I was definitely like, if something happened, something exciting, I was like, okay, things are going to change. Like, this is, like there's going to be results. But, you achieve this goal and you just have to keep going. Like, it's not going to be a defining moment. I think defining moments are super, like, it puts too much pressure on people and artists to, like, to feel like there's going to be this huge thing that you're going to be able to identify, or this places in your personal history that are going to be like, this was the moment. Like, maybe that does happen for some people, but in my experience, like, it's really just a culmination of a bunch of small, even slow moments,
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my
I think Yeah, totally. No, but I would agree. I would say like it's the same for me. Like there are definitely little highlights, but they nothing like overshadows, and nothing's like that's what like launched my career, or like, you know, like you just keep putting in the work, and there's like little wins along the way, and there's places where you're like, okay, yeah, I pushed through that fear.
Like even
And
making the book, you know, that could have been you were like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because I don't know, you know, what's going to happen, or is it going to be worth it? But you said it was even better than what you imagined. So it's like you invested in yourself and then your practice. And
yeah, totally. I was like, at first I was like, okay, first run I'm gonna do like 100 books, but like, am I even gonna be able to sell 100 books? And my husband was like, are you joking? Like, you probably have like 100 friends that will buy the book, let alone like, I don't know. He was like, you need to think more highly of yourself. Well, I don't know. That's my first time. I don't sell books. I like make photos, you know? So yeah, definitely like a continuous learning process. Okay, so I think that's a great way to go into this last question that I have for you on the topic of like little things adding up is I wanted to know if you have any daily or weekly habits or practices that you feel have influenced your growth or your work.
I like to have slow mornings with breakfast. And I feel like during that time, I sort of try to figure out what I want to accomplish that day, and like mentally prepare and figure out like what I have to prioritize. What do I want to do first? That's been really helpful for me. Also, I feel like just making sketches and researching ideas is really important for me, to sort of keep my process going. And you know, that's stuff you can do while you're like watching a show or listening to a podcast, so you can have your work and your like regular life. I feel like, I guess that's one thing, like being able, or not feeling like I have to separate my work from my personal life so much, like allowing myself to be inspired whenever, and allowing myself to work on something while I'm doing something else that, you know, it would be considered outside of my practice, I guess, like watching a show. That's been important to me. What else? I feel like for me, traveling was a really big turning point in my career when I was like finally able to travel. Like I found so much inspiration in travel, and like in traveling, I found so much inspiration in traveling. And it really helped me reset, like after making a body of work, to be able to take a trip, whether it be a big one or a small one. So that's something that I haven't been able to do now after finishing the work for my current show. So it's been a little bit like a different routine for me to get started on making new work, because I feel like I haven't been able to fully reset in the way that I normally do. But yeah, those are the things.
Yeah, those are, and it's interesting. And I like the point you made about travel, because even like you mentioned seeing the styrofoam sculpture, and then you bring that into your own practice. That's like, I guess, yeah. And then like you said, combining your work life and your personal life. And, you know, I feel like for you draw inspiration from, you know, the road trip you went on with your husband, or like so many things that you see in life, and then connecting those with your personal experience and then creating out of that. So it's super interesting. Cool. Well, thank you so much for all of your thoughtful answers to my questions. I'm getting to know you better, and seeing your recent work and learning more about your process. Why don't you take this time to let the people know where they can find you and your work?
You can see like my paintings and my personal fine art practice at lilianmartinez.com, and then you can see my my shop is bfgf-shop.com, and then my Instagram is at bfgf.
Cool. And then you can find my portfolio at Carmen carmen-chan.com and on Instagram at Carmen Chan. And then you can buy my book also on my portfolio site under books. So thank you. Thanks, Lilian.
Bye.
Bye.